Thomas, a certified straight guy, somehow ended up working as a bartender in the city's most famous gay bar. The reason was simple. It was the only part-time job near his university. A year passed, and Thomas remained steadfast, a perfectly straight, unbending steel beam. Whenever a flirty customer approached, he would just put on a soft voice and say, "But I don't feel anything for men, okay?" And they'd instantly back off. After all, 90% of the clientele here were adorable little bottoms. Until one night, a man with a dangerously beautiful face walked in. The moment he appeared, the entire bar seemed to light up. Even Thomas, self-proclaimed straight as an arrow, felt his cheeks heat up at the sight of him. He greeted politely, "First time here, right? Hope you have a good time." The man gave only a faint smile. His gaze, deep and steady, made Thomas's heartbeat quicken. One by one, customers went up to ask for his number, but he ignored them all, sitting quietly at the bar. Thomas frowned inwardly. Did he come here just to use the Wi-Fi or something? By the time Thomas handed him his 10th drink, their fingers brushed and a spark shot straight through him. Startled, he pulled back immediately, face flushed red. The man, however, looked utterly calm, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. Thomas panicked, grabbed a rag, and fled to another corner to wipe tables. But just minutes later, the man slid his empty glass toward him, and underneath it lay a thick stack of tip money. "What the? Why so much?" Then Thomas caught that heated gaze fixed right on him. His chest tightened. His mind went blank for a second. The aloof man, who had ignored everyone else, was only looking at him. A strange mix of fear and excitement rippled through Thomas's chest, but he shook his head furiously. "No way! I'm straight! I can't be tempted!" Summoning his courage, he put on that same fake pouty voice again. "Sir, I told you already. I don't have feelings for men." The man leaned in slightly, his low voice brushing against Thomas's ear. "Then, let me help you find out." Thomas froze, thunderstruck, blushing all the way to his ears. He turned away in panic, pretending to clean again, but couldn't resist sneaking a glance. Under the dim lights, that sharp, fox-like smile gleamed, dangerously mesmerizing. "No! Snap out of it!" Thomas slapped his own cheek. "Don't let that face fool you." Yet even as he told himself that, his heart kept fluttering. In the end, half out of greed for the tip, half because of those eyes, he foolishly followed the man out of the bar. The night wind chilled him back to his senses. When the man opened the car door for him, Thomas stammered, Sir, I'm straight. I didn't mean to give you the wrong idea." The man simply raised a brow, silent and unreadable. Then he leaned down slowly. Startled, Thomas pushed him away, stumbled out of the car, and tripped down the steps in the most ungraceful fall imaginable. He scrambled up, eyes wary. The man had moved to help him, but seeing that frightened look, stopped. He just watched quietly as Thomas bolted into the night, his gaze dark and unreadable. That night, Thomas lay on his bed, heart pounding. "Oh my God, my first kiss got stolen. By that fox." Worse still, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Flustered, he rushed into the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. "It's fine. It never happened. Tomorrow I'm quitting this job. I'm never seeing him again." He said that, until a thick wad of tip money fell out of his pocket. Crap, I forgot to give it back. From that day on, Thomas kept dreaming about the man. That smile haunted him night after night. After several sleepless nights, he finally called his best friend to rant. His friend just sighed and said, "Bro, I think you might be a little bent already." "Shut up!" Thomas snapped, face burning red. Just then, a group of researchers entered the campus, and leading them was that man. Thomas froze. Before he could escape, his foot slipped and he tumbled down the stairs. Thud, thud, thud. When he looked up, the man was standing right in front of him. Worse yet, Thomas's hand was still gripping his leg. The whole courtyard went silent. "Please, someone just bury me alive." The man bent down, offering a hand. "Are you all right?" Thomas almost took it, but flashbacks of that night hit. He shot up, muttered something incoherent, and bolted. The man, however, didn't look offended at all. His gaze lingered calmly on Thomas's retreating figure. In the restroom, Thomas leaned against the wall, mortified. God, could I be any more embarrassing? Footsteps approached. He didn't even need to look. He knew it was him. Running now would only make it worse. So Thomas stood stiff against the wall, pretending to be calm, even though his heart was hammering wildly. The man stopped right beside him. Thomas couldn't help sneaking a glance and muttered under his breath, "Show off." "Thomas." The deep voice came from right behind him. "I'm Daniel." Thomas decided. This time he had to make things clear. He checked the stalls. No one else was there. Then he slammed the door shut. Daniel raised an eyebrow, even reached over to lock it for him. The next second, Thomas found himself pinned gently against the wall, Daniel's breath brushing his ear. "Thomas," he murmured, voice low and rough. "You can do whatever you want." Thomas forced himself to stay calm, pulled the stack of tip money from his pocket and said quickly, "I came to return this. After this, there's nothing between us." Daniel glanced at it and smiled faintly. "Keep it." Just then, footsteps echoed outside. Two men entered the restroom. Inside the tiny stall, Thomas froze. Daniel pulled him close, holding him still. They were practically pressed together, chest to chest. To keep quiet, Thomas covered Daniel's mouth with his hand. And Daniel licked his palm. Thomas jolted like he'd been electrocuted, snatching his hand away, face burning. Why am I hiding with this devil?" When the footsteps finally faded, Thomas darted for the door, but was yanked back again. He found himself trapped between the door and Daniel's body. "I didn't mean any of this. I'm straight, I swear," Daniel chuckled softly. "Then, let me double-check." Before Thomas could react, a light kiss brushed his cheek. He froze. His mind went blank until the sound of falling money snapped him back. Daniel bent down, picked it up, and tucked it right back into Thomas's pocket, his fingers brushing his waist on purpose. "Don't touch my waist," Thomas stammered. "That's your money." "Stop giving it back. I'm not a bank." Daniel just smiled, answered a phone call, and walked away. Thomas was about to chase after him, but an upperclassman caught his arm. "Thomas, there you are. Help me carry these boxes to the hall, okay? Oh, and you're assigned to escort the research group back to their hotel tonight. By the way, weren't you just with that tall guy earlier?" Thomas nearly cried. "Senior, are you trying to push me down the gay path?" Later that evening, Daniel stood on stage giving his presentation. Calm, elegant, and composed. The lights reflected off his sharp features, and the entire room buzzed with admiration. The student next to Thomas nudged him, eyes sparkling. "Oh my God, he's like a real-life celibate god." Thomas gritted his teeth. "Celibate, my ass. He's a sly old fox, that's what he is." A female classmate leaned in and whispered, "You know him, right? Please get me his autograph. Or even better, snap a close-up photo. The girls' group chat is going crazy over him." Seeing the adoration in her eyes, Thomas wanted to shout, "He's not what you think," but instead, he forced a stiff smile. Sure, I'll try." That evening, Thomas was assigned to escort the research group back to their hotel. When they arrived, only Daniel was left waiting outside. Walking beside him, Thomas felt his heartbeat grow unsteady. He muttered under his breath, "Come on, hurry up." Inside the car, he deliberately took the passenger seat in the front. There was no way he'd sit next to that seductive menace in the back. Still, through the rearview mirror, he couldn't help sneaking glances. Daniel had noticed long ago, but he stayed quiet, smiling faintly, as if enjoying the attention. When the car stopped at the hotel, Thomas quickly got out and turned to the driver. "Sir, could you print me a receipt, please?" Daniel frowned slightly. "If you're so short on cash, why won't you just accept my money?" "Because that's money I don't deserve," Thomas replied curtly. Daniel stepped closer, forcing him back until his shoulders brushed the wall. "In that case," he murmured, "why not earn it properly?" Thomas's eyes widened. "I'm telling you right now, I don't do those kinds of things." Daniel raised a brow. "Neither do I. But let's call that kiss from last time a debt. I'll pay 50 for it. Consider it settled. You, what? You earn money, I clear my tab. Win-win, isn't it? Or do you want to prove you're really straight? Thomas was momentarily speechless. The logic made no sense, but somehow sounded reasonable. Finally, he sighed. I'll think about it. The next night, when Thomas escorted Daniel back to the hotel again, he was suddenly pulled aside into a quiet corner. Before he could react, Daniel's lips brushed his, a fleeting kiss that still sent Thomas's mind spinning. A group of girls passing by gasped out loud. Thomas snapped back to his senses and bit Daniel's lip, stumbling backward. Daniel turned, his expression icy, as he glared at the girls until they scurried away. Wiping the blood from his mouth, he chuckled softly. I just wanted a taste. You bite surprisingly well, Thomas glared. What are you, testing food? You better pay for that. Daniel laughed. All right then. That radiant smile made Thomas realize he'd fallen into another trap. But if he didn't accept it, he'd just lose again. So he sighed, muttering, Fine. That night, Thomas told his best friend everything. After listening silently, his friend concluded in one sentence. I told you, man. You're so not straight anymore. But when he mentioned the name Daniel, his friend frowned. Wait, that sounds familiar somehow. The next day, Daniel's colleagues noticed the mark on his lip. He simply smiled and said, A little cat bit me. As he spoke, his gaze drifted toward a certain little cat, passing by with a tray of drinks. Thomas felt his stare and muttered, Cat? More like a fox in disguise. That afternoon, the little cat was once again cornered by the big fox. Coincidentally, Thomas also had something to say. You talked way too long yesterday. 50 isn't enough. You should pay by the second. The fox chuckled. Then next time, I'll let you hold the stopwatch. Thomas raised a brow. You think that kind of thing needs a stopwatch? I'm not a pervert. Daniel stroked his chin, smirking lazily. All right then, make it 150. Thomas lowered his head, shoulders trembling. Daniel thought he was angry, until he heard the soft snicker. The man's expression softened. This kid really is too adorable. He almost reached out to ruffle Thomas's hair, but before he could, the little cat hissed, Don't you dare pull any stunts like that in public again? It's bad for your image. Daniel raised a brow, smiling faintly. The next time, I'll take you somewhere private. Say, a hotel? And just like that, Thomas somehow found himself standing in front of Daniel's hotel room. How did I end up here again? The fox took off his coat, poured 2 glasses of wine, and the light traced the lines of his shoulders. Graceful, but dangerous. Thomas stiffened immediately. He's totally trying to get me drunk. When Daniel offered him a glass, Thomas shook his head hard. Daniel didn't insist. He replaced it with water and gently handed it to him instead. As he leaned forward, the open collar of his shirt revealed a hint of muscle. Thomas's gaze involuntarily followed. When their fingers touched, the glass slipped, water spilling onto Daniel's hand. Sorry, let me wipe it for you. Thomas hurriedly grabbed a napkin, dabbing at his hand while blushing furiously. A small tattoo peeked out from Daniel's wrist, delicate and meaningful. Thomas stared without realizing. Daniel smirked. Want to see the rest? No need, Thomas blurted, clutching his collar protectively. Daniel laughed, catching his wrist. But you owe me, don't you? Shouldn't you pay it back? He gently pulled him down onto the sofa. Their lips brushed. Briefly, softly. Thomas froze, then panicked and bolted for the door. As he ran, Daniel's calm voice followed. If you're tired, you can stay. I'll give you the bed, Thomas ran faster. Who knows what give you the bed means in his dictionary? In the car, he sighed in relief. That was close. But hey, I earned my 500. Fair deal. The driver chuckled, glancing in the mirror. Your girlfriend's got quite a temper, kid. Look at your neck, full of scratch marks. Thomas turned on the front camera. Sure enough, bright red streaks. Daniel, Do you think I'm your pet or something? The next day, with bandages around his neck, he told his senior, a stray dog bit me. Luckily, I dodged in time. She gasped, you should get a rabies shot. Before he could protest, a familiar voice sounded behind him. I'll take him. It's safer that way. Thomas froze. Cold sweat trickled down his back. Daniel. Everyone thought Daniel was a gentleman, only Thomas knew. He was the slyest fox of them all. On the way, Thomas grumbled, from now on, stop biting my neck. Daniel smirked. Then, somewhere else is fine. Thomas blushed bright red. Don't push your luck. Daniel's voice softened. He unwrapped the bandage around Thomas's neck. I just wanted to check the wound. But when he saw the marks, his brows furrowed, his voice dropping lower. That looks serious. His fingers brushed Thomas's skin before he quickly pulled back, as though restraining himself. To break the tension, he stepped out of the car and returned with a pale pink ice cream. For you. Cool you down. Thomas blinked. It was the expensive brand he'd only tried once, on a friend's birthday. He took a tiny bite, sweet, creamy, almost dreamlike. Daniel leaned against the car, quietly watching him. Then, with an almost playful smile, he reached out and wiped a bit of ice cream from Thomas's lip, before licking it off his own finger. Sweet indeed. You're shameless, Thomas snapped, ears burning red. At that exact moment, a few classmates called out, Hey Thomas, lunch with us? Yeah, coming, he replied quickly, feeling oddly relieved. Saved at last. But why do I feel disappointed? When the girls were gone, the sly fox leaned close, his breath warm against the cat's ear. You like one of them, don't you? Thomas jumped back like he'd been shocked. They all have boyfriends already. Don't talk nonsense. Daniel smiled lazily. Then tell me, Thomas, if you like someone who already has a boyfriend, what's wrong with that? Thomas's worldview exploded right then and there. By noon, he arrived at the barbecue restaurant as promised. The moment he saw the table full of food, he transformed into a rice-devouring warrior. The boy-crazy girl beside him lightly tapped his sleeve. So, how's the thing I asked you about going? Thomas froze. Oh no, he'd completely forgotten. Luckily, his lying skills were top tier. Mr. Daniel doesn't really like strangers taking pictures of him. She frowned. What about the photo? You didn't forget to take it, right? If he didn't deliver, the entire fan club of Daniel admirers would probably tear him apart. Thomas reluctantly gave in. I'll send it to you tomorrow, okay? Her face lit up. She clasped her hands together in gratitude. You're seriously my hero? Meanwhile, Thomas silently prayed, Hero my foot. Lord, please save me from this mess. That night, he secretly trailed behind Daniel. Thinking of the hundreds of girls eagerly waiting for a fox photo, Thomas gritted his teeth. He'd just have to risk it. For the first time ever, he took the initiative to get into Daniel's car. He had already prepared an excuse. The school insists that volunteers escort the visiting team all the way to their hotel. Daniel didn't bother to question if it was true or not. After all, if the kitten didn't come find him, he would have gone out to catch it himself. While Daniel focused on driving, Thomas quietly pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Click. The sound was deafening, and the flash went off like lightning. He wanted to sink into the seat and disappear. Daniel tried to keep a straight face, and failed. He burst out laughing. Thomas, utterly mortified, gave up pretending. Fine, just let me take a few shots properly. I'll even pay you. To his surprise, Daniel smiled. All right. Once we're back at the hotel, take as many as you want. Thomas tried to act composed, but his legs trembled as soon as Daniel entered the bathroom. The memory of the last time, when Daniel had pinned him to the sofa, came rushing back, leaving his throat dry. He gulped down water to calm himself. And then, disaster struck. The moment he heard the shower stop, he dashed forward, pushing open the door. Daniel froze mid-motion, a towel loosely wrapped around his waist. He raised an eyebrow, smirking as he lifted the edge of the towel slightly. Got a good look? You You shameless man. Thomas's face turned bright red. I just needed to use the bathroom. He shoved Daniel out and slammed the door shut. When he emerged again, Daniel was sitting calmly on the bed, shirtless. Under the warm light, the lines of his abs and the black tattoo on his side were almost hypnotic. Thomas stared, both impressed and alarmed. Who exactly is this man? Daniel glanced up. Why are you standing at the door? Scared? Who's scared of you? Thomas shot back, trembling as he shuffled closer. Daniel reached out and pulled him to sit on his lap. Gently, he unwrapped the bandage around Thomas's neck, his fingertips brushing lightly against his skin, eyes deep and unreadable. Thomas clung to his last thread of rationality, quickly raising his phone to snap a picture. When he woke up the next morning, the sunlight was already streaming in. Thomas bolted upright, frantically checking himself. Thank heavens, everything was intact. Turns out he had pretended to sleep to avoid trouble, and then actually fallen asleep. To dodge the awkwardness, he tried to sneak out quietly. But the moment he moved, a hand landed on his thigh. Startled, he flopped backward, thud, right onto the floor. He didn't dare make a sound, just crawled like a worm into the bathroom. Unbeknownst to him, the man on the bed had a faint, amused smile on his lips. By the time Thomas came out, Daniel was dressed, calmly typing on his laptop. As Thomas passed by, Daniel suddenly reached out, brushing his thumb across the corner of Thomas's mouth. Thomas jumped. What are you doing? Daniel showed him his finger. Toothpaste. You've got some on your face. Thomas went speechless. How could someone be so irritating yet so heart-thumpingly gentle at the same time? On the drive back to campus, Thomas tapped away on his calculator. So, about last night. Let's call it an even 1,000, okay? Daniel said nothing, his expression darkening. Taking the silence as agreement, Thomas grinned. Perfect. That means I only owe you 1,314 now. He was in such a good mood, he didn't notice the storm brewing beside him. As soon as the car stopped at the school gate, Thomas hopped out, practically humming to himself. Then suddenly, his wrist was grabbed, and Daniel pulled him back for a kiss. Thomas's eyes went wide, his heart pounding like crazy. No matter how many times he saw that face, it always left him breathless. Daniel looked at his dazed expression and kissed him again. Crash. A milk cup hit the ground. They turned to see the boy-crazy friend, frozen in shock, eyes wide and mouth open. Oh no! Thomas paled. The girl spun around and ran. Wait, you've got it wrong, he shouted, chasing after her. But she stopped, bent down to pick up her cup, and said cheerfully, It's fine. You two go ahead. Just pretend I'm not here. Thomas was dumbfounded. That reaction's not quite right. He crouched to help her wipe the floor, but Daniel's warm hand stopped him. Daniel tossed the dirty tissue aside, took out his own handkerchief, and carefully wiped Thomas's fingers clean. The scene made the girl's eyes sparkle like stars. Thomas, trapped in Daniel's gentle aura, forgot how to breathe, until Daniel ruffled his hair. I'll be going now. Only then did Thomas snap out of it. He turned to explain, but the girl was already lost in her fantasies, mumbling, Just remember to send the photo. The whole group's waiting. Thomas sighed in defeat. All right, I'll send it later. The kitten had unknowingly fallen for the sly fox, but refused to admit it. At the conference hall, he opened his phone to pick a photo to send. Most were blurry, except for one. Daniel's abs, sharp and defined. 9 perfect blocks. Thomas's face burned as he fumbled and dropped his phone. Before he could pick it up, a senior passing by got to it first. The screen was still lit, clearly showing that picture. Oh my, your boyfriend's got quite the body, she teased. Thomas snatched the phone back, hastily powering it off. Thankfully, Daniel's face wasn't in the shot, or they'd never be able to explain. He stammered, He's not my boyfriend. The senior raised an eyebrow. Oh? Then who is he? Thomas broke into a cold sweat. I'm doomed. Utterly doomed. To protect his reputation, he had no choice but to fake having a boyfriend. After the senior left, he trudged back to the dorm, utterly drained. Opening his phone, he hovered over the delete button, but couldn't bring himself to erase Daniel's photos. He fell asleep at noon and drifted into a strange dream. He was trapped inside a dark closet, pounding on the door, calling for help. After what felt like forever, a sliver of light seeped in through the crack. That single beam lit up his whole world. He stumbled out and froze when he saw who'd opened the door. It was Daniel. "So," Daniel murmured, "do you still insist you're straight?" The words hit him like lightning. Thomas jolted awake, heart racing. "I'm not gay." "I'm not gay," he whispered again, but Daniel's voice kept echoing in his mind. Desperate, he called his best friend for advice, only to hear, "Turning gay? Bro, you were never straight to begin with. Seriously, drop the macho act." Still, Thomas refused to believe it. To test himself, he borrowed some BL anime from his friend, for research purposes. Surprisingly, he felt nothing at all. His friend offered another theory. Maybe you only have feelings for one specific person. At those words, Daniel's face flashed vividly in Thomas's mind. He immediately shook his head. No way. They'd only known each other for a few days. And besides, anyone could tell Daniel was bad news. A true fox through and through. Even if he were gay, he'd never choose that man. Or so he told himself. But when he was assigned to escort Daniel back to the hotel, he still obediently went along. Rain poured down in sheets. His umbrella was useless, and soon he was drenched. By the time he arrived, he figured Daniel had already gone inside. Suddenly, warmth spread across the back of his neck. He turned. Daniel was standing there, holding the umbrella over him, offering a cup of hot coffee. Thomas accepted it, smiling faintly. The coffee warmed not only his hands, but also his heart. Together they walked through the rain. Daniel glanced at Thomas's torn umbrella and immediately understood why the boy was soaked through. Thomas was shivering, his teeth chattering with every step. Without a word, Daniel took off his coat and draped it over the younger man's shoulders. "Don't be shy," he said softly. "You're freezing. Wear it." Thomas felt a faint warmth bloom in his chest. They walked side by side for a while, the sound of rain filling the silence between them. When they reached the crossroads, Daniel stopped. "Go back to the dorm and take a hot shower. You don't have to walk me today." Watching him leave with that useless umbrella, his entire back drenched, Thomas suddenly felt guilty, like he was taking advantage of Daniel's kindness. So he stubbornly insisted on walking him all the way to the hotel. Daniel chuckled. "If you really want to come to the hotel, why not just shower with me?" Thomas froze, his face turning crimson. "That's not what I meant." Daniel only laughed again, reached out, and brushed away a few raindrops on Thomas's face. Then, under the pouring rain, he leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on his lips. Afterward, he saw Thomas safely back to the dorm. Watching Daniel's figure disappear into the curtain of rain, Thomas could only sigh. I fell for his tricks again. That night, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Was he into men? He never felt anything watching movies, but whenever he thought of Daniel, his heart beat uncontrollably fast. Could Daniel really be the one for him? But he still wanted to date a sweet, gentle girl. Determined not to let things go further, Thomas decided he would talk to Daniel clearly the next day. The following morning, he hid behind the auditorium door, waiting for Daniel to arrive so they could settle things. But no matter how long he waited, Daniel never showed up. When he asked an upperclassman, she told him Daniel had called in sick. For some reason, Thomas felt strangely disappointed. Maybe because of the rain last night, he wasn't feeling well either. He sat at the reception desk for a while and accidentally fell asleep. When he woke up, it was already dark. Someone had draped a coat over him. Looking up, he saw Daniel sitting by the window, working quietly on his laptop. Thomas beamed. "Daniel!" Daniel closed his laptop, walked over and handed him a paper bag. It was lunch, the meal Thomas had skipped earlier. Before he could say a word, Daniel had already turned away. Later that afternoon, Thomas dozed off again. When he woke up, he heard familiar voices in the hallway. It was Daniel, being seen off by the same senior. "Is Daniel leaving already?" Thomas asked. "Yeah," the senior smiled. "He's got a fever, so he's heading home early." The words made Thomas freeze. He suddenly remembered Daniel's pale face at noon, probably because of yesterday's rain. Without hesitation, he asked for permission to leave early and rushed after him. Watching him run off, the senior covered her mouth and giggled. She might have just discovered a new campus ship. When Daniel finished fastening his seatbelt, a little cat suddenly appeared in the passenger seat. "Thomas, the senior asked me to drive you home," he said awkwardly, cheeks flushed. Daniel smiled but didn't expose the lie. The car moved slowly down the road and Thomas kept sneaking glances at him. Seeing how pale Daniel looked, he began to worry. When the man started coughing, Thomas immediately made him pull over. A few minutes later, Thomas returned with a bag of medicine and a cup of warm water, only to find Daniel sweating with a fever. "You're burning up," he exclaimed. Daniel looked at him, eyes soft. "Are you worried about me?" He lifted a hand, lightly brushing Thomas's neck before pulling him closer. Thomas's heart thudded wildly. Realizing what Daniel was about to do, he quickly pushed him away. "No, you'll spread it to me," Daniel laughed. "Then I'll make up for it with a kiss tomorrow." He took the medicine while Thomas blushed and mumbled, "I think I might actually be gay." Daniel froze. The medicine bag slipped from his hand. His gaze deepened. "I mean," Thomas stammered, "before, I was straight. So what happened that night doesn't matter. But now that I'm gay, we can't keep having that kind of unhealthy relationship anymore." He took out his wallet and handed Daniel the remaining money. But Daniel didn't try to stop him. He just smiled faintly and pulled him out of the car. Soon, they stopped in front of an ice cream shop, the same one Thomas had once called delicious but too expensive. Daniel used the money Thomas had given him to buy a membership card, but the phone number he registered was Thomas's. Thomas frowned in confusion. "What? Is he planning to make me feel heartbroken every time I get a spending notification? Some new kind of revenge?" But Daniel placed the card in his hand. "It's yours." "Mine? Why?" Thomas blinked. Daniel's smile softened. "You said our old relationship was unhealthy, so let's change it to something better, like dating. Think of this card as the first gift I'm giving my boyfriend." The words struck like lightning. For the first time in his life, Thomas was being confessed to, and by another man. But the irony was, he himself had truly become one too, a man who'd fallen for another man.